about how we receive intuitive information. And the way that we receive intuitive information, I always like to say, comes through our senses. And so we all have different areas that we're a little bit more gifted in, or that we naturally intuitively connect with. And one of those is what we already talked a little bit about, and that's this claircognizance. And claircognizance is just this knowing, just this awareness of what you need to do next, or just knowing the answer without really understanding where that came from. And claircognizance is really the most direct form of intuition. It's really just being very open, and there's no need for interpretation. It's just that direct line to your intuition. But it's also the easiest to ignore, or the easiest to put aside, because we connect with it so easily in so many ways. And so it'll come through and it'll just feel like a thought, or just a knowing, or an understanding, and not really understanding where it is that it comes from. This can be really, really powerful, but can also be hard to recognize until you learn to just keep flowing with it and to trust it. The next one is clairvoyance. So clairvoyance is this ability to see intuitively. And a lot of people expect this to be the ability to see things outside of yourself. So I have a unique ability where I'm sometimes able to see things with my physical eye, with my actual eyes. So I've had the experience of seeing angels. I've had the experience of seeing people's auras with my physical eye, and different things like that. But this isn't the way that most people experience clairvoyance. Most people experience clairvoyance just like it's a daydream in their mind, just like it's a flash of an image in their mind. And so we just assume that that's a daydream, or because it just flows so easily and naturally, we don't necessarily pay it much attention. But that's actually clairvoyant information coming through. So pay attention to the things that we call our imagination, or those daydreams that are coming through, and ask yourself how you interpret those images or that information that's coming through, because that can give you some really amazing intuitive information. The next thing is clairaudience. So clairaudience is that hearing connection, intuitive connection. And so again, sometimes people have the ability to hear things outside of themselves, the ability to hear angels, to physically hear their guides, to hear a word being said outside of themselves. But most of the time, again, this is just in our own head, in our own voice, running through our mind. And so it just will sound like our own voice telling us to do something, or maybe just a word flashing through our mind, or it'll feel like our own thought. So you really have to learn to get a sense of what it feels like when that comes through. I find that my clairaudient messages tend to come through when I have quiet moments, when I'm just not focusing a whole lot, and when my guard is down. And so I notice when those really important thoughts seem to come through, or really intelligent thoughts seem to come through, that a lot of times that's my clairaudience that is helping to guide me and helping to show me the way. Or just a random thought that seems to come out of the blue, but feels like it's telling you to do something that would be really helpful for you. Clairgustance is this ability to connect with intuitive information through taste. So every once in a while, people will have this experience where they will taste something. I tend to see this with people who are natural mediums, so natural ability to connect with people who have crossed, because a lot of times that information will come through with a crossed loved one who is trying to give you information about maybe a food that they really liked here on this earth, or just give you information about them. So sometimes that will come through in that form. And sometimes I even believe that food cravings are actually a form of clairgustance. Clairalience is this ability to connect with intuitive information through smell. So it's similar. And again, I feel like this connects a little bit more with people who are intuitive in terms of being able to connect with crossed loved ones in that mediumship way. But this can come through in many ways. And this is this ability to just smell something. And so you might get intuitive information through smell. It might tell you about a crossed loved one. You might smell their perfume, or smell cigar smoke or cigarette smoke or something, just to give you information about that person. Or you might smell something that will trigger something within you that helps you to understand something better. I once met somebody that I worked with who was able to do entire intuitive readings through her sense of smell. So she was able to understand understand people through smells. And so she would describe who you were through the way that different things smelled. And it really helped her to connect with her intuitive information, and she was able to provide a whole understanding of who this person was through the smell information that was coming through for her. And again, this might be something that happens outside of yourself, or it might be just an overall sense of that, just what something may smell like. And the last thing is, and so many of us connect with this, is clairsentience. And so this is connecting with intuition through feeling, so it might be this ability that us empaths have to understand other people's feelings. And so we can tend to be a mirror for those feelings, and we can tend to take those feelings on ourselves. And so we can understand how somebody outside of ourselves is feeling on a pretty regular basis. Or we might find ourselves suddenly just becoming overwhelmed with a feeling, and that's because we're taking on that energy and we are receiving that intuitive information about that person, about that space. And I also find that we receive that intuitive information through the physical body. So again, our body might serve as a mirror for other people, and we might find ourselves taking on a lot of physical symptoms that other people have. So we might find ourselves taking on physical symptoms that are released later, that we only experience temporarily as part of that. Some people believe that things like fibromyalgia and chronic pain are connected more with this ability to connect in a clairsentient way, and this ability to sort of take that on, and that energy just feeling a little bit stuck in the body. So I always recommend to people who are dealing with situations like this that you are allowing yourselves to connect with somebody who's trained in energy work that can do this clearing and this release of the energy. I think that quantum energy and IET energy work really works very well with things like this. And I want to talk about the symbols that the universe uses, that spirit uses, because this really is the language that spirit uses to communicate with us. And by the way, when I say spirit, what I mean by that is just my overall word that I use for all of these energies that I talked about earlier that are here to give us intuitive information. So our spirit team, our guides, our angels, our higher self, the universe, God, whatever you want to call that, I just put that all under one umbrella of the word spirit. And this is the way that spirit communicates with us. It's the way that they connect with us is through symbols. It's that language. And so it's really important that we work on developing that language with spirit so that we can communicate with our intuition and further develop that. So when I say symbols, we receive those symbols a lot of times through the clairs that we talked about. So we may get a random image of something in our mind or a word in our mind. And so sometimes we have to ask ourselves, what does that symbol mean to me? Because spirit is always going to be delivering signs and symbols that are from our frame of reference. So what I mean by that is they're going to give us the signs and the symbols and use them in such a way that we would understand them. And so one symbol might mean something completely different to one person than it means to another. And so spirit will use it from your frame of reference and help guide you from your frame of reference with those signs and symbols. And it's not necessarily just the signs and the symbols that we receive through that intuitive guidance in our minds. It also can be outside of ourselves. There are constantly signs and symbols and synchronicities being arranged for us by our guides, by our angels, by our crossed loved ones to help show us that we have support here in this world and to help guide us. And so it's our job to begin to look around for those symbols and to begin to work on interpreting what it is that those symbols mean to us. So when I say signs and symbols that are showing up for us, that can be anything and everything. Anything can be a sign, anything can be a symbol. So if you have just kind of a random image come to your mind, that can be something that you need to symbolically interpret. Or if you have something cross your path that feels important, making sure that you, again, ask yourself, what does this mean to me? What is it that spirit is trying to tell me? And it can be in many, many forms. I find for myself that I get a lot of signs and symbols in the form of animals. So animals who cross my path actual animals that cross my path, or it might be just animals that are showing up in my Facebook feed, or the image of an animal, or even the name of an animal that just keeps repeating and repeating. I know for me that if I hear the word fox 3 times, or a fox shows up in 3 ways, that's always going to be spirit symbol for me that I need to pay extra attention, because there's something that I'm needing to be aware of here. There's something not quite right. There's something that I need to look at in terms of who I'm trusting or what I'm putting my trust into. And so they will use that because we've developed that language with each other. So it can be animals, it can be numbers. Repeating numbers are what we call angel numbers, and those are specifically the way that the angels use to communicate with us. So if you find yourself seeing, for example, 1111 a lot, which probably so many of you who are watching are seeing that, because what that means is that you are stepping into a new level of your connection to the universe. And so it would make sense that prior to taking this class, you might find yourself seeing a lot of 1111s, or as you're working on your intuition after this class, you see a lot of 1111s. And that's really just the universe's way, or the angel's way, of saying that you've leveled up, that you've stepped into a new level of your growth or your intuition. And so we might see different repeating numbers that all have different meanings to them. Or it might just be anything that shows up into our experience. I get lots of information simply through license plates or billboards along the road or signs that are hanging up. Really, anything and everything that your eye gets pulled to, or that your awareness and attention gets pulled to, can be a sign. Even, for example, those positive, uplifting quotes on Facebook, or something else that you notice in the Facebook feed, or really even something that somebody else says to you that just really stands out and feels important and feels like you need to pay attention to it. So it basically is a sign if it's something that you feel like you need to pay attention to. And so start to notice when you have that feeling of, oh, I need to pay attention to this, or oh, my eyes got pulled to this, because that's going to give you a whole lot of information about what it is that you need to do next, or just tell you a little something about the messages that your angels and guides are trying to get your way.